The US is on high alert over a growing number of foreign ISIL fighters captured in Syria as part of a major combat action, which is, of course, now over. Washington urged its allies, particularly Britain, to pay more attention to citizens who have fled Europe to join the terrorist organisation. So after the UK Defence Secretary said they should not be allowed to return home.
I don't think they should ever set foot in this country again. They turned their back on Britain, our values, and everything we stand for. They are the worst of the worst.
We're working with the coalition on foreign fighter detainees and generally expect these detainees to return to their country of origin for disposition.
Another British official suggested, ironically, that extreme measures should be taken several months ago. This warning's been going on for a long time. The Minister for International Development said the only way to deal with returning fighters was, you may recall, to kill them, he said. For now, ISIL fighters of UK origin who return home are facing prison sentences. France initiated a programme for its part to try to de-radicalise jihadists. It's not been that successful. It seems to have failed. Paris has now also turned to sentencing militants as well. Meantime, in Germany, education and de-radicalisation programmes are still in operation, but those coming back are also facing trial and jail time. It's a big problem what to do. Russia, too, has got to face this. In Russia, the most dangerous former jihadists are imprisoned, though in the past a number did join de-radicalisation programmes. They've now closed, so it seems, time and time again, country to country, that kind of thing just doesn't work. One controversial case has come to light in Russia. One former ISIL fighter says that he escaped the terror group and turned himself into the Russian security services. He then faced trial in Russia but was later released. Now, the court explained that he was never involved in combat and also cooperated with the investigation after admitting his guilt there, so he's been given some leniency. We managed to speak with him about his time in Syria.
I got interested and started reading forums and watching video online. I was given a phone number of a person who could help me get to Syria. He assured me that those who came could leave at any time and no one would be kept there. But they immediately took away our documents and telephones. It was a shock for me. I felt helpless. Everything was different from what they told me.
Okay, when they're under, if you like, false pretenses, do you believe him, do you not? Let's discuss this issue now. Mo Answer's with us, political and social commentator, and also Stephen Morris from the English Democrats Party. Hi guys, thanks for your time. This is a controversial subject. This warning that these guys are going to come back at some point, highly trained some of them as well, has been in the offing for years now, hasn't it? Mo, to you first. Where do you see, what do you do with these people when they come back? Do you try and de-radicalise them? We're seeing time and time again that doesn't seem to work. Or do you throw them in jail for the rest of their lives?
It is a tough question. It is a controversial question. There are always going to be those that say these people have shunned Western democratic values, the rules of law in this country, and when those people have gone out there, they've committed heinous acts of terror. At the same time, we know that that is a more granular picture, because some of the people who went out to Syria, to Iraq, to fight, went out there, on humanitarian grounds, they got sucked into the conflicts. Some went out as spouses. Some, children have been born out there. Some then changed sides and ended up trapped out there. So the difficulty we have is, and that's what a lot of the Western countries, including countries like Indonesia and others, there are hundreds of foreign fighters who have been captured by the Syrian Democratic Forces out there that are being held at the minute. Now, initially Britain said we're going to make them stateless, remove their passports, not going to allow them re-entry. Other countries then said let's take a more enlightened approach. Some of the Nordic nations said let's try and repatriate them, have counter-radicalisation programs, which in part have actually been quite successful in some areas. At the same time then, the US has now taken the lead, and the US Secretary of Defence said foreign countries need to repatriate their own citizens and deal with them using the rule of law.
Mo,
and I think that's a sensible way to go.
What was the British plan? If you take these guys' passports away, if they're British citizens, where were they supposed to go? I.e., not on our back doorstep, mate. Somewhere else, yeah?
It's the ultimate form of NIMBYism, which is the idea that we have foreign fighters, some of them that there are some quite dark stories about interests in the West and in Syria that have helped these fighters get out there, like the Bethnal Green schoolgirls, the ISIS brides, who were only 16, and we couldn't figure out how they got out there. there are lots of different stories about what happens to these people if we make them stateless. Ostensibly, they will stay out there, they will keep breeding extremism, terrorism, and radicalization, and they'll keep killing and they'll keep hating us. So it's a problem we have to deal with. You can't hide from it.
But I feel there's not much sympathy for them from Stephen Morris. Stephen, no, what would you like to see? Let's talk about the British passport holders, first of all, that have gone out there. Mo is saying some of them went out there with their families, some of them went out there, maybe they were brainwashed. But I mean, I suppose the argument is, well, how do you know you weren't going to go out there and fight end of the day if you're going to join ISIS? What do you think should be done here practically?
Well, practically, they shouldn't be allowed back here. If they've committed crimes abroad, then they should be dealt with abroad. If they've committed crimes in Syria, they should be dealt with by the Syrian authorities, or which authority is now in control of Syria.
Well, that's the problem,
isn't it? The issue being is they should not come back here. They should not come back here. It's as simple as that. Because they've committed the crimes abroad. So why should the taxpayer foot the bill for all this rehabilitation and all this sort? And then probably they're in jail for quite a while. That costs more money. When these crimes have been committed abroad, let the authorities deal with them under the rule of law.
The end of the day is because they've got a British passport, I suppose. They're coming back home.
No, the fact is, does that mean that I have to, my laws apply to every country I go to? No, if you go to another country, you obey their laws. You break their laws, you have to abide by their justice system and whatever punishment comes down. You cannot fall back on this British passport and say, oh, I committed atrocities abroad, but I'll throw my British passport into the mix so I get sent back home. No.
And what if the situation...
atrocities or whatever abroad...
What if the jurisdiction, the situation there, the legal system in these countries is so shot up, they're not able to be dealt with? Take Syria, take Iraq.
Well, there is the Syrian government there. There is a Syrian government. The issue being there is that the Syrian government is not a friend
but they're not
of
in
the
control
West.
of half
the West
the country,
is supporting. Yeah, the West is supporting the opposition. Now, to us, it's whichever side gets them, they're the one to deal with them. They're not our issue. They've gone there to fight, they've gone there to commit crime, they're not part of an armed force, they're not part of a peacekeeping force. They've gone there as armed civilians to cause havoc and to kill people. They get caught, they dealt with over there. They do not come back here, regardless of whether.
Can I interject with just two matters, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
If I can just interject with two matters. The first issue with this, firstly, to say that the West has been supporting the opposition isn't strictly true, because the British Parliament took the vote not too long ago to support President Assad with airstrikes in Syria to bomb ISIS and opposition fighters. So to say that we have a clear policy of supporting the opposition isn't right. The Assad family have been allies to the West. Assad came here with
we only have a policy of fighting ISIL.
Met with... No, but met with, I'm just saying in terms of national policy, foreign policy, Assad came here, met with Blair, met with the Queen. They have, him and his father were both pro-West, pro-democracy, secularist interests in that country. And the second point of order is this, which is, how do we know people have committed crimes without putting the evidence in front of them and putting them on trial? Just to assume people went out there. So,
well, they don't have to go on trial here.
I'm in London
regularly. They don't have to be on trial here. They go on trial where they've been caught.
The first Brit to lose his life in Syria was a young lad from Portsmouth who was a street preacher. He saw Assad committing heinous acts of genocide and war crimes and just brutalising people and murdering citizens and civilians. He'd murdered, I think, 20 or 30,000 people by the time this young lad from Portsmouth went out there.
You're trying to go in a different direction to the actual issue.
I'm just saying, this guy went out there as a chef. And he ended up getting embroiled in the conflict.
No, you just confused it. Let me go back to your original point to do with Assad.
Out there?
Let me go to your original point to do with Assad. Okay, some of the North African states were actually more pro-Western than they were towards the ISIL and all that lot. The West went in and overthrew them, and the actual people had to go and
we've gone off topic a bit.
The people that the West put in place. Now, Assad, the issue with Assad was it's like the phrase, your enemy is my enemy. We only went there to deal with
we've gone off
ISIL.
topic a bit
We
here.
weren't
We're trying to
there
work out
necessarily to support
what to
Assad.
do.
We were there to go against ISIL.
We're trying to work out what to do. Sorry, I've got to butt in.
British passports
We're trying to
should
work
not be
out.
allowed back. It's
Yeah.
that simple.
Do you have another option, Stephen, that other than saying these guys should not come back in? Is there any other practical way, with your practical hats on, you could see, well, okay, if they do have to come back in here, which that is the way it's going to happen at the moment, they have to be dealt with somehow. Can you see any other way other than saying, no, you're barred?
Well, there is a way, but obviously the UN is so weak, it's laughable. And the EU, again, is so weak, they're just non-existent. They should have had buffer zones there. They should have had the UN peacekeeping forces making safe areas. And so we could properly categorise these people. Rather than, so, okay, these people going in to fight for whichever side. These people fighting of Kurdish descent against ISIL. But now, because they're fighting for the Kurds, they're being classed as terrorists here. It becomes a ridiculous situation. The United Nations peacekeeping force should have been in there early on. The EU should have been in there. It's on the border of Turkey. Now Turkey has invaded Syria. The fact is, we should have had a peace and buffer zone there where the nations and people who had British passports could have gone to a safe haven.
Guys, we've got to leave it there.
Been left. Now these people have been caught fighting.
Cheers.
Right,
Stephen, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid, my friend. We've got way over time. We're about to fall off the air. Mohan, political and social commentator. Stephen Morris, English Democrats Party Northwest Chairman. Thank you for your time.